Welcome. This is a lecture series for Chapter 2 for Business Communication. And Chapter 2 is collaboration, interpersonal communication, and business etiquette, okay? There's nothing like business etiquette. It's sort of like you really need to learn it and you really need to incorporate it into your life. It's sort of like going to dinner and having somebody, slurp or lick their fingers or eat with their mouth open. Lick their fingers if it's not barbecue. All right. And so learning objectives, although you should never lick your fingers, but anyway, so learning objectives for this chapter is list the advantages and disadvantages of working in teams, describe the characteristics of effective teams, and highlight 4 key issues of group dynamics. 2, offer guidelines of collaboration communication, identify major collaboration technologies, and explain how to give constructive feedback. 3, list the key steps needed to ensure productive team meeting. And then 4, identify the major technology used to enhance and replace in-person meetings, which COVID sort of did. Okay, so I mean, it revolutionized. So this book is pre-COVID. And then identify 3 major listening, describe listening process, and it explains the problem of selective listening. And then explain the importance of nonverbal communication and identify 6 major categories of nonverbal expression. And then 7, explain the importance of business etiquette and identify 4 areas in which good etiquette is essential. So communicating effectively in teams, you need to have collaboration. Working together to solve complex problems is an essential skill for workers in nearly every profession. The biggest complaint that businesses have is that people don't know how to work together. And let me tell you, as I always tell my students, if you think your boss is stupid or everybody else is, well, you do what your boss tells you, and until you have their position, right? Because they're not that stupid for whatever reason that they have the position that they have and they're your boss, whatever reason they have it. Okay, so at this point in time, they're higher than you. And what the biggest lesson for me while I was interning in school and I was an assistant principal, okay, I was an intern and then I went into an assistant principalship, is that whoever our principal, whatever it is that he wanted is what we did, okay? And we could convince him otherwise, and we could show different data that if he decided on one specific program or whatever it is, the direction that he wanted to school, we were there to help him and be able to, really progress, right, and implement whatever program it is that he wanted. So huge lesson for me because I thought I knew everything, and in the end he's the boss, okay? And so even if I thought he was wrong or even if I thought he didn't understand the program, it didn't matter. When I got my school, I was able to do whatever it is that I wanted within the constraints of the requirements or whatever it is that the full objective was, okay? So very, very important for you to be a team member and for you to collaborate, okay? And just like you have people that don't show up, that are late in their assignments or their portion of the report that they're doing or whatever for you, you're going to get that anywhere, okay? Because people are different. Problem solving also. You need to be able to learn and problem solve. When some of my students say, Miss, I don't have my iPad. Okay, well, you have a phone and you have a computer. Well, but I don't have internet. Okay, well, you can go to the library or whatever. So life is about problem solving, and the problem is yours, okay? Whatever problem you have. So the faster and the quicker you learn to be able to resolve your problems, the easier and the more fluidity your life will have, okay? And so be mindful and make sure that you solve your own problems, okay? And you can go with people so they can help you solve your problems. You can ask for help, but if you just give up, that's not going to help you, and that's not what life is about. Life is about solving your problems, whatever it is. Life is about like a mathematical problem, right? You have to sort of figure it out as you go along. And then committees, being in committees that you're either placed or that they place you, which sometimes are difficult because you don't get to choose who you're working with. And you're there to work. You don't get to choose. They're not your friends, okay? So increase information and knowledge, and increased diversity in views are the advantages of teams, and then increased acceptance of the solution. So working together is very, very important. You know, I have at times not liked somebody, but we've worked very well together, which sometimes doesn't work, right? Because there's always a resistance. So as long as you keep to the goal, and as long as you know what the goal is, then that's it. Sometimes there's also a lot of personality issues, right, that, you know, become a problem. You're there to resolve whatever it is, or create or finish a project of whatever. It's a team effort, and we are only, how one of my students said, right, we are only as strong as our weakest member. Okay, so that's really hard to think. And then groupthink, hidden agendas. Be careful with the hidden agendas. You know, a groupthink is social structures that might be you know, hindering to the committee. Okay, so be mindful of that. And then the group dynamic, you know, assuming team roles. You know, there's going to be people that are that's going to be a leader, someone that, you know, navigates the team and make sure that everybody gets their work in, and make sure that, you know, you're sort of on top of it. So that way you don't get to the end and somebody didn't do their work, right? And you're missing this whole chunk of really important information for your presentation or project or whatever it is that you're working on. And I am going to give a really, you know, heavy duty example. So one of my first classes at Southwest, they had to work as a team. And so ironically, okay, there was this guy, one of our students, and he'd never show up ever. Like, he'd never show up. Like, I think he showed up twice. Okay. And so one of the times, it was when the team was here, and the team gave him, I don't know why, or they let him do the project, like the whole PowerPoint. Well, he didn't show up for the midterm. Okay. He completely didn't show up. He didn't tell his teammates. And the biggest lesson for there is I told the group, I said, why would you give such an important task to someone that doesn't show up? If they don't show up, they're not going to show up for the midterm. He didn't even like tell them anything. He didn't have an accident, nothing, whatever. He just didn't show up. So be mindful that that important sections of whatever needs to be done are done by important people, and don't give major projects to somebody that isn't reliable or consistent. Or if you do, have a backup, so that way the other person knows. So they turned in all their slides, and this guy never showed up, and he never worked on them. Okay. And nobody knew. And they didn't go into Google Slides where they can access it and whatever. So make sure that you have a backup always, and that you have someone else just in case something happens to that person. Okay. And then you have allowing the team evolution, orientation, conflict, brainstorming. You're going to have to be able to figure out how to move through that. And then, collaborating and communication efforts. Select collaborators carefully, agree on project goals, have specific timelines. Okay. Clarify individual responsibilities. Who's in charge of everything? Hopefully the guy that always shows up is the one that is in charge, or techie is in charge of the, putting the slides together and doing the PowerPoint. If not, you're going to be in big trouble. And if your grade depends on it, somebody's going to mess up if they're not consistent, or they've never worked with Google Slides or whatever, Prezi or whatever, right? PowerPoint presentations. And you're going to risk your grade for somebody that you don't know if they're going to come through. So don't do that. And then establishing clear processes, and then avoiding compromising as a group. Okay. And then you have here lots of collaboration via mobile. It gives you all sorts of explanations in the book. And then giving and responding to constructive criticism. Be open to it. If you're struggling, go to your professor, go to your teacher, go to your instructor, and then have them guide you through it. And then if you're doing something and the group doesn't like it, be able to take the constructive criticism so you can do better, and so it could flow easier, and you can turn in a much better thing. And then making your meetings more productive, right? Define your purpose, select participants for the meeting, choose the venue and the time, set the agenda. Agendas are super, super important. If you don't have an agenda, it's very easy to get off track, and it's very easy to talk about all sorts of stupid stuff that have nothing to do with the time that you're there, which is about project, And so make sure that you set your agenda and you stick to it. Okay. And then putting meeting results to productive use. What were the meeting results? What was a productive use? Don't stay too much much on one. If time it, if you can't get through a specific section within the meeting of the agenda, go to the next portion of the agenda. Okay. Go to the next portion of the agenda. Okay. If you can't get through, improve your listening skills. Most of the time, they say that we listen to respond, and I come from a very big family, and we speak Spanish, so we always yell, and then mama's a little hard of hearing, and so it's a lot of like yelling. Okay, so it took me a long time to be able to be quiet, not interrupt the other person, and truly listen to what they were saying, and not be able to listen to respond. And so it's a learned and it's a skill that you need to really practice, okay? Because most of the people just do the listening to respond, all right? And then understanding the listening process on page 50 here might be different for you. It's receiving, decoding, remembering, evaluating, responding. And then overcoming, effective listening, selective, barriers. We sort of just pick and choose what we want to hear. So it's important to not be so selective and be able to really, hear and listen to whatever's being said. And then improve your nonverbal communication skills, right? I had an assistant that was applying. There was an assistant position, and so there was a position open, and there was somebody that came in, an older gentleman that was not bilingual English Spanish, okay, because that's what you can be, bilingual English Russian. And so I told him, you're not bilingual English Spanish? And he's like, no, but I can assure you that I will make myself understood and I will be able to communicate. And I thought that was a great answer. I didn't choose him because I needed somebody that was bilingual, but in terms of you all, it doesn't matter if you know English or Spanish. It does matter, okay? And I had a student that said, well, Spanish, miss, they're discriminating. No, it's a skill. Having a language is a skill. That's why if you have a language, and especially here in the border, right, if you don't know Spanish, then somebody that knows Spanish is probably going to get the position, because Spanish is so much required, okay? So I highly encourage you to learn another language. But anyway, in case you don't, you can say that you can communicate. And an example of that is that in the medical field, you have all sorts of patients, specifically older patients. So older patients can't hear, or they have a disability, in hearing or something. And so there's other ways that you can communicate, okay? So nonverbal communication is very, very important. It also, if you're mad or whatever, people know that you're mad, so they're going to close up, right? So you have to be careful. You have to be mindful of the nonverbal communication that you have, so that way, people will be in a risk-free environment, and, you are very much aware of how you are coming across. There's sometimes I have like an ugly face or whatever, and people think I'm mad, and I'm not, okay? So I have to be very conscientious of my facial features. So, facial expressions, gesture and posture, vocal characteristics, personal appearance, touch, time and space, nonverbal communicating effectively. So, and then developing, your business etiquette, okay, is about, smooth and finish to the start, elegant and refined. Don't go to work with your club heels, right? Or, very exposed. There's different, there's different, wardrobes to wear at different places, okay? So also crisp and starched, in terms of how you wear your stuff, and cleanliness, being bathed, being clean, and then up to the minute trendy. So lots of things that are there in terms of business etiquette and workforce that you can be doing. Saying please, there's email etiquette, good morning, good afternoon, when you talk, my apologies, when you interrupt, or I didn't mean to interrupt, please excuse me. So be conscientious of like voice sounds, be courteous when you called someone, convey positive professional attitude when you answer the phone, end calls with courtesy, clarity, use your own voice features to help callers. And then, business etiquette online, avoid personal attacks, stay focused to the original topic, don't present opinions or facts, support facts and evidence, follow basic expectations of spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. Be mindful, because since we text a lot, and texting is very different from emails, right? Sometimes they start transitioning, like you start, since like I always do like please and text PLSE, and then I've started noticing that I started doing that in my emails, which is probably acceptable now, but it really probably isn't appropriate etiquette. Okay, so be mindful of all your etiquettes. Okay, and then use difficult to break passwords or emails. Twitter use, ask if the good time for a chat. Watch your language and keep your emotions here. Yeah, don't use like everybody cusses and stuff like that. That is not appropriate in a professional setting. Okay, avoid multitasking while using these, and then don't use reply all. Don't waste others people's time with sloppy, confusing, or incomplete messages for emails. And then respect boundaries and time of virtual space. We used to work all the time, and we're workaholics, and so a lot of my assistants used to work. They were insomniacs just like me, and we used to work a lot, and so sometimes they used to send out, and I've been guilty of this, of sending like emails at 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't do that. If it looks like you're crazy and it looks like you have nothing better to do, it's just, you're probably super, super responsible, and you're probably a workaholic. So just hold on, or write the email, but don't send it off till like 8 o'clock. Okay. So be mindful of those things, that even though you might think of certain things in the middle of the night, don't do that. Okay. Also, it's sort of like school, right? Like I get, emails and texts at all times at night. So just be mindful of that, because I do, your professors do have a life, and so when you're texting, that you're late at 1 o'clock in the morning, your professors are going to think that there's an emergency. So be mindful in terms of etiquette and appropriateness, and then be careful online commenting on mechanicisms. I don't know how to say that. That's very interesting. Okay, so I hope this helped, and let me know what you all think about these lectures. Love and light.